I ended up having a conversation with my friend and being like, I need you to teach me how to drink. I need to drink so I could be a part of this group. And so that is where it all kind of started for me. And then I started going to the parties. I started having drinks at the parties, and that's just was the way to fit in.
I am Jonathan Ball, a certified coach in effective liminal psychology, and I'm joined by Ellen, my co-host and another certified coach here with me. Today, we're talking about alcohol and society. So, one of the things that we recently talked about was the idea that alcohol exists kind of on three levels, three S's, we might say. Alcohol and as a substance, alcohol and society, and alcohol and the self, and how the addictive substance that is alcohol intersects with those topics. And so today is our deep dive into alcohol and society. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. Ellen, when I talk about alcohol and society, what comes up for you?
Yeah, the first thing I started to think about when we were talking about having this as a topic today was just how the first time I ever drank was definitely related to societal pressures, right? I mean, first, let's just say, like, just the way we are wired as human beings, like acceptance and belonging and wanting to fit in and wanting to be a part of whatever chosen society we've decided we want to be a part of is really natural, human. We're actually wired for it. I mean, if you think back, centuries ago, like when we were, out on the plains and we had to be a part of a tribe, of a community, of a herd, or if we were off on our own, we would get picked off by lions or tigers or whatever. So we're actually wired to want and need this sort of belonging, so that when we think about the first time that, for me, I'll just share the first time that I ever drank, it was really about belonging. It was about wanting to be accepted. I was in high school. I actually was kind of a goody two shoes for quite a long time, and like was very anti-drinking, anti-smoking, anti-everything. And my very good friend kind of fell in with a crowd that was doing a lot of drinking, and little by little, like everybody I knew sort of was becoming part of this group. And I was over here on the side, not really wanting to participate in it and feeling very alone. And then I ended up having a conversation with my friend and being like, I need you to teach me how to drink. I need to drink so I could be a part of this group. And so that is where it all kind of started for me. And then I started going to the parties. I started having drinks at the parties, and that's just was the way to fit in, to feel belonging, to feel accepted, and it worked. I mean, I did. So and then, fast forward into, you know going to college, and where do people meet? A lot of times at college is you go to a party, you go to somebody's house and people are having drinks, and so it just became very quickly this thing that I used again and again to fit in, to become a part of, to have belonging, um, with whatever group. And I moved a lot in my lifetime. I moved so many times, probably a dozen times. And so every time I move, it's like, okay, how am I going to find my tribe? Well, the easiest way for me to figure it out is to like go have drinks. And yeah, so that was the first thing that came to mind for me, was society, just like this need for belonging.
Hmm.
What about for you? What comes up for you?
So much, but I think I love connecting the conversation of alcohol in society with that first drink because it makes a lot of sense, right? Like alcohol can't have its hooks in you before you take that drink, but so many of us are kind of pulled into the web by social pressures. And you said that your first time was kind of like a friend situation and fitting into a peer group. Mine was my family with all of the men in my family are scuba divers, and they would go on this yearly trip down to Florida. It was just the men, just the boys. And going on that trip, at the age of 16 was the first time that I had really had several drinks. And it was very much kind of like a male bonding experience, but not with my peers at all. It was like my august elders. And it was a huge part of kind of showing that I was cool and kind of stepping into my own and I could handle myself and I could bounce back the next day and, go scuba diving and stuff like that. And do you remember your first drink? Like, do you remember?
I do, because it was with that friend and it was in her basement, and we were just yeah, experimenting with all of the liquors in her parents' liquor cabinet. It didn't go well in the end for me that night, but it also didn't turn me off. It was like, okay, I learned my lesson there and let me keep going. But
Hmm.
why do you?
I'm just curious. Like, I think it's so interesting what people's first drinks are. And so, like, you were drinking
Hmm.
hard liquor for your first drink. I'm sure that was like a um quite a shocking experience.
Oh, yeah, no, I can remember. I mean, these were like the little uh, really colorful ones. Some of those, there was whiskey, there was vodka. I mean, we did not do it smart at all. I think I probably mixed 10 different shots of different kinds of alcohol and ended up on the bathroom floor all night long from that experience. I mean,
Oh,
I'm
I'm
lucky I
sure.
didn't really have a bad medical situation because I went from 0 to 100 in one night with not having any experience or recognition that what I was doing was even dangerous.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah, to your point, it wasn't about the alcohol like being tasting good or being something um nice. It was just like I felt like I needed to figure this thing out so that I could belong.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you said like because it worked, right? Like that was a way that you found that acceptance, and that's something that I think a lot of people that haven't had experiences with alcohol that they're unhappy with might not understand about it because alcohol solves air quotes a lot of problems in the moment, or else we wouldn't keep going back to it as a tool. Like
Mhm.
alcohol certainly was a way for me to feel accepted first by the men in my family, but then later on in college, I'd had some experience, and a lot of the people I was hanging out with hadn't had as much experience. So I kind of had this clout already as somebody who could handle um, drinking more than other people, and that gave me some kind of like social standing or something. And um, that wasn't not part of the attraction for me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's making me think how, it's such an ingrained part of society in so many ways, right? Like it's a part of so many like initiations into different groups, but also it's like it's romanticized so much in
Mm.
media and in books and in all of the ways. Like, I mean, I got married in Napa Valley, uh, in a winery because I believed fully that that was like the coolest thing, right? It was sophisticated, it was beautiful, it was, there was there was no disconnect for me at that time. It was all like fully bought into like this is the way to be an adult, a sophisticated adult. This is the way to be like I'm not just, pounding liquor in the basement like I was as a teenager. I've like arrived,
Yeah,
right?
you've made it.
I've made it. And that kind of messaging, is everywhere. And I
Yeah.
think, I don't know, for men, there's like messaging around, having a scotch and like,
Got to be a man, right? Like I'm thinking about so many things. Ellen, I also got married at a vineyard in Asheville, North
oh,
Carolina. So isn't that funny?
that's
Um,
awesome.
but I think about like the manly men that you read about, like Ernest Hemingway or Kurt Vonnegut, or like you read about these Ken Kesey, and you read about the Beat generation writers and like that's what men were men and they were drinking scotch and trying out with wine and like it was that was all part of it, part of the allure. And I was also thinking about how it is everywhere in our society. I think it was a really interesting study in how intertwined alcohol is with our society if you just watch a TV show and notice how alcohol is portrayed. Like, try watching How I Met Your Mother on the other side of your relationship with alcohol, and you're like, wow, this is kind of strange. Like that there's such an emphasis on drinking and kind of like drinking culture and it being an essential part of how you do anything, right? Like, we're celebrating, drink, we're sad, drink. It's kind of a replacement for dealing with the emotions that come with life. I'm also thinking about Beth and I just started watching Scandal, and Olivia Pope is famous for having wine as one of her like essential food groups. She kind of subsists on fancy wine, not just your cheapo wine. It's got to be high end wine and popcorn. And that's not a recipe for very good nutrition.
So true. Yet we all want to be her, right? Like
Right.
it's
Well, and she's
yeah.
the height of
And
sophistication, right? Like walking the halls of
ex
power and always dressed unbelievably well and, getting things done.
exactly. This facade that because all these images we see, it's like the way are behaving in and around that wine or whatever drink they're drinking is like how a person would feel in the beginning of having a drink, right? I mean, nobody's slurring their words, nobody's feeling woozy, nobody's, and some of these shows you see them drinking several drinks, right? And they very rarely show anyone having a hangover the next day. It's just like they're up and at 'em. And if there is anyone that is ever like seems to be over drinking and having a problem, it's very much like, oh, well, they have a problem. They have a problem. Everybody else over here is just drinking, for pleasure, for whatever, all the no major impacts on it, right? So then that also becomes this message that we get that's like, either we're like on the streets with a problem, or we should be able to just be drinking the way everybody else is and not be suffering any negative consequences because nobody's ever showing the negative consequences. And so that's where the disconnect can really come in like, wow, what is wrong with me? Everybody else seems to be able to, not have a problem. And meanwhile, I'm waking up in the middle of the night. I feel like crap the next day. I'm feeling anxious. This must be a problem with me because it can't be a problem with alcohol because everybody else is doing it successfully.
And no wonder we feel so alone when we're waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning with, like the sweats and racked with anxiety and guilt about having drunk more than we want to. They don't show that part. And and so like
Yeah.
you have no frame of reference for it. And it's not like everybody's out there talking about it either. And when you find out, like if you are lucky enough to find a community that is talking about what it's like to be drinking more than you want to, it can feel so liberating. And I think it's another kind of interesting intersection with like alcohol and society, because it's like, what society, air quotes again, are we paying attention to? Because there's the kind of meta popularized version of society, but then within that, there are these niches of society like we experience through this Naked Minds methodology and the kind of material that they put out, where like that's a microcosm of society that is telling a story around alcohol that feels much more in alignment to my reality with it. And it felt so um liberating because, as you said at the top, we're wired for finding that connection and finding that community. And when you find that connection, you find that community that is seeing with clear eyes the same thing that you're grappling with and talking about it in language that you can understand and you can relate to. That's so powerful. It feels like, oh, like, oh, I found my tribe. I found like, I'm not the only one out here. I'm not crazy.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think one of the other realizations I had along the way is that because I sort of had the lens I was looking through my life through alcohol with was that everyone drinks. Everyone I know drinks. No one has a problem with drinking. It's just me or like really crazy alcoholic type people, right? People other than people like me and my friends and my community. I would think I had the impression in my mind you would go to a restaurant, everybody would be drinking wine, everybody would be having beers at a ball game. And I think because we we get these messages coming in from so many different places, we then start to internalize them and to then generalize them for everything. And one of the like interesting things that happened to me was when I started to question this and I started to hear from other people because I was part of this naked mind community where people were saying that they don't like they want to change their relationship with alcohol, right? That not that I'm like, okay, maybe there's some other people out there that aren't drinking that I haven't even noticed before. And then you take off your blinders on that you're only looking for people drinking. And it's like, not everybody's, I would go to a restaurant and I'd be like, God, the table next to me, they're ordering iced tea. Huh, isn't that interesting? This table over here, I'm noticing like the guy ordered one drink and the woman didn't have anything to drink. Because in my mind, it was like everybody's drinking, you know? And then it made me feel even more frustrated and isolated and alone. And then when you take those blinders off and you're like, oh gosh, there are actually all different kinds of communities of people in different relationships with alcohol that I wasn't even looking for, seeing, believing were there.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to that idea of like perception shaping reality, right? And like so much we're so driven and informed by what we expect to see that when we are on the lookout for what is really there, what is really happening, it can be such a, I don't know, revelatory experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like looking for people that drank a lot because I drank a lot, being drunk, so then I create my own reality too, right? It's like, okay, everybody I know around me drinks a lot. Well, that's because I'm choosing people based on their drinking pattern.
Right, right. Like, yeah,
Not,
can you keep up with
so
me? Like, then we can
yeah.
be friends, right? And I mean,
Yeah,
like, and then the people that
absolutely.
you're hanging out with, I think you said it perfectly. Like, you tend to things become normalized based on the people that you're around so much, right? So like a lot of people will never have a problem with alcohol because everybody they grew up with, or everybody around them, just for whatever reason didn't drink, and they're kind of like, I don't know, inoculated against that. But our who we keep society with really does have such an influence on who we then become, and it's almost like a self-reinforcing pattern where if we get into this vibe where we're like, alcohol is pretty good, a little bit of alcohol is good, a lot of alcohol is really good. I'm going to find more people that jive with that because I'm putting myself in situations where people are drinking a lot of alcohol and then we just kind of get stuck in there. And then that can be even more painful when we realize that that's not working for us anymore because then everybody that you know, all of your friends are still mired in this like kind of unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and then you feel very isolated. You're on the outs again because you're the one that's questioning things, which can be a really painful, really scary part of the whole experience when you find that you're evolving and you're starting to get curious about what it means to have a relationship or like the nature of your relationship with alcohol. Um, you almost feel like, well, I've surrounded myself with people who drink. Who do I talk to about this? Can I talk to anybody about this? Are they going to understand? Are they going to be supportive? Are they going to judge me? So like, talk to me about what your experience has been like with your friend group or like your people in your life, your social scene when you started questioning your relationship with alcohol. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean this was really tricky and complicated for me. And I think based on, what we've been talking about, like this need for belonging, right? And so I had a lot of fear around if I change this part of me, will I still be accepted? Will I still get invited to things? Can I still connect with the people that are my friends and my family, by the way? You know, how will this change relationships? And that fear actually kept me really stuck there for a while. And so it wasn't until I started to like I got to the point where I was like, I need to make this change. And I just need to I, I actually went about it very incognito. Like I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. I didn't tell anybody what I was doing because I was afraid, well, A, I was afraid that I wouldn't succeed. So I didn't want anybody giving me
Mm,
accountability. And B, I was afraid of any kind of repercussions. So which I actually, there's different schools of thoughts and everyone is different, but I think, kind of keeping it to yourself for me anyway worked really well. Some people will say you need to talk about it, you need to have accountability. That's really helpful. And I think both things can be true. It just depends what's going to work for you. But for me, I kept it very private and I didn't really share that I was changing my relationship with alcohol. If I went to an event or a party or a group, I either um, made up something like I'm doing a 30-day cleanse, or I'm the designated driver, or I'm whatever. Some I'm taking medicine and I can't drink, you know, or I just surreptitiously filled my glass with something other than alcohol and pretended I was drinking.
hmm
Because I was really afraid of this belonging piece. And, I had to get some practice and experience knowing that I could go to an event and not drink and still be okay. And that I would still be my own same self, fun, friendly, easy to talk to, that the people wouldn't reject me. This was a big fear of mine. And so I went about it kind of privately and I used alcohol-free drinks pretty heavily in the sense of I would always want to have something in my glass. I never want to miss out on the party. Like I need to have something fun and fancy also. So if I did ever like be out that I was drinking something different, it would be something fun and fancy. But quite often it would just be very on the sly why I'm not drinking, what I'm not drinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's your business, right? Like, I think it's
Mm,
so, I don't know. I love what you said about the both things being true. Like, for some people, telling others and having that level of accountability can be a successful pattern. Um, and then for others, like, it's your body, it's your relationship with alcohol, it's your needs are valuable and valid. And you don't owe anybody an explanation if you don't want to give it to them. And that gets to be okay. For me, I was in a situation where like 99% of my friends are drinking buddies, and so I was really worried about that part too, where who am I going to connect with and hang out with, and like what are we going to do? That was the big thing for me. And it definitely took some practice and maybe a couple of inelegant conversations where I was like, listen, I'm over reassuring everybody that it's going to be fine in a way of like telling myself that it's going to be fine. But for me, like saying up front to my friends, hey, just so you know, I'm not drinking. Don't let that stop you. You do whatever you want. Um, was really helpful to just kind of like, let's pull the band-aid off before I get there. And in that way, I think I was kind of like giving them an out, like, well, if they only want to drink with me, then they don't have to hang out with me. And then I had the pleasure of finding out that, oh, we can actually, it's not just alcohol that we can talk about or like bond over. Um, like they can have a drink, I cannot have a drink, and we can still have a good time.
yeah, I love that so much. It made me think of an experience I had And I was working with a coach at the time, and I was, trying to get a stretch of time alcohol free. And I, my first instinct was just to hunker down and not do anything social because I didn't want to deal with this question. So I'm like, I'm just going to stay home. But then, things started presenting, and then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? And I was getting so in my head about, do I need to drink? Maybe I'll just drink with them. Maybe I won't drink. How will I do it? When I get to the restaurant, what will I order? And I was trying to play it forward and visualize it. And my coach suggested, like, what if you just send a text to your friend before you meet and say, hey, I'm not drinking because I'm doing a 7 day no sugar situation. So, I know normally I would love to have some drinks with you, but this time I'm not going to be drinking. I just wanted to let you know. But I'm so excited to see you and looking forward to it. And I was like, oh, could I do that? That felt really vulnerable. I remember typing it out, and when I hit send, I was like, I mean, this sounds crazy now, but I was like, my heart was beating. I was
Isn't
like,
that
I don't know what
funny?
she's gonna say. It feels so vulnerable. It feels so scary. Like she's gonna think I'm overthinking it. She's gonna think all these things. And then, like within an hour, she texted back and was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing a cleanse too. Great, can't wait to see you." And that was it. And it was over. And this whole big thing that I had been building in my head, literally this had been going on for like a week, back and forth. What am I going to do? And it balloon popped instantly. And then it was like I could just relax. I could just get excited about seeing her. I could just know that we're going to have a nice time. And another time this happened to me too. And you know, the person wrote back, "Oh, I hope you don't mind if I have a few." And I was like, no, absolutely not. Go for it. And it just like I had built up this thing that it was going to be this, I don't know, decisive moment of rejection or something. And it just never ever has been.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, I I think 99.9% of the time that's the situation, right? Like where somebody's just like, oh, it doesn't matter, that's fine, that's cool or whatever. I can think of one time in my experience where somebody was weird about it or kind of pushy about it. And I just had to remind myself that it didn't make me think about or waver in my conviction with what I was doing. If anything, I was even more convicted, right? Like that, no, right? Like this is not your say over me. I was like, it's so funny, like because we beforehand, like, we're ready to put in somebody else's hands how we feel about like our drinking or not drinking or whatever. Um, but in this instance, where somebody was kind of being weird about it back to me, I was like, no, this is mine, and I was ready to go to the mat for it. And I just had to remind myself that that's so much more about their relationship with alcohol than it is about anything that I'm doing. Um, yeah, and then it came out a little bit later that that person really struggled with their own relationship with alcohol, and it led to a lot of negative things. But it's just I think it's good to be prepared that if somebody is being weird to you about your decision to not drink, that it says so much more about where they're at than it does anything about you.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And, it's making me think like now that I am more open about not drinking and even why I'm not drinking and what I'm doing in this alcohol free space now, it's like people will just like voluntarily start saying, "Oh, well, I just don't drink that much either," or like, "Oh, yeah, well, I only have a couple drinks a couple times." Like people are very quick to want to suddenly start to justify their drinking, and it's like, I don't have any problem with you and your drinking. It has nothing to do with that. But you can just see the discomfort that arises when
Yeah,
people feel like you might, you're doing something outside of what is considered the societal norm, right? And then
right.
people get uncomfortable with that, sometimes threatened, sometimes confused, sometimes defensive. And all of those reactions are certainly possible.
Yeah, I can think back to I was that person, like if I saw
Mm,
somebody choosing not to drink at a party or something and I was multiple drinks in, I'd be like, "Pff, what's wrong with them?" Like, like, oh, they must be weak somehow. Like that they're holding themselves to a higher standard somehow makes them not as cool as I am drinking more than I'd like to.
mhm.
It's so absurd kind of looking back on that. There's that I mean, I've been guilty of saying this before, like, I don't trust somebody that doesn't drink, right? Um, really? Looking back on some of those kind of because I didn't come up with that. That's something that, like somebody said once
Mhm.
and then I took on and I just repeated it and it was just a way for me to defend my own unhappiness with my own problematic drinking. And so I just kind of like passed that along. And I look back now on this side of things, kind of with the, I don't know, like kind of it's kind of cringy to look back on that, but I also look back on that version of myself, that past version of myself with a lot of compassion because I was deeply unhappy. I was racked with anxiety. I was, mired in something I didn't know how to deal with or navigate, and I just didn't have the tools that I have now. And that's where I was. And thank goodness that was able to figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, and that brings a memory to mind for me too of actually having a conversation with a coach around this because I was like, I don't even like non-drinkers. You
Yeah.
know, when I was trying to figure out my like, how am I ever going to be a non-drinker? I don't even like non-drinkers. To your point, I don't trust them. They're no fun. Like I can't think of a single non-drinker that I like. And thankfully, my very wise coach, didn't take offense at that because she, of course, was a non-drinker. But I was able to see over the evolution that was a very particular mindset that I had created in my mind that I was total. I didn't even know how wrong I was, right? Because I had decided something to be true. And that's, the great part of the work that we do is to work on these mindsets and beliefs, and that we will talk more about on this podcast. But it's like when we believe something to be true, there's really something to question there. Like, where did that belief come from? To your point, somebody probably said that at some point. I internalized it. Is it really true? Is it really true that there's not a single person I can think of that doesn't drink that I don't enjoy being with? I mean, or yeah, that I enjoy being with. Yeah, and it was the first time that I mean, just verbalizing that to someone felt very vulnerable because it was like admitting that I had this really narrow perception of, who I was willing to let into my orbit, drinkers,
Hmm.
basically, right? And then I had to expand my worldview and see. And also there's nothing wrong with drinkers. Like I'm happy to
Right.
spend time with drinkers. Like, I just don't want to drink myself anymore. So me believing though that I didn't like drinkers meant that I couldn't like myself if I were a non-drinker. And that was what I had to grapple with, like being okay in the identity of a not drinker and not feeling like not only would I reject myself, but everyone else would reject me because that was the way I viewed things. So I just assumed everybody else did as well.
Yeah. And you've hit on like that last kind of the three S's idea, right? Where we talked before in a previous episode about alcohol as a substance, and this has been so much about society, but that deepest level, the most difficult to crack level is alcohol and self. And I think that's a great kind of preview for that conversation. Um, but Ellen, when it comes to alcohol and society, if somebody is at the very beginning of trying to figure out their own alcohol-free journey or starting to question if alcohol or having a relationship with alcohol in the first place is for them, what are some kind of quick tips or takeaways that you would offer them to kind of put into practice some of the ideas that we've been talking about today?
I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is just compassion to like understand that the reason that you feel so uncomfortable, so scared about like making a change with alcohol and how it might impact your relationships is so natural and so universal. We all feel it, and it's what keeps a lot of us stuck for a really long time. So, um, very human of you if you're experiencing that. And also a couple things um, I would invite people to think about. One is to start incorporating in their stream of consciousness stories and interactions with people that don't drink and that love not drinking. And that might mean quit lit. It might mean listening to podcasts like this, or there's so many in the alcohol free space. That might mean listening to stories of, people that have given up drinking and how their life has changed for the better. Being in community with people that are talking about how alcohol really impacts them as like a counter influence to all of the messages that we're getting from society all the time, to kind of counter message a little bit in our brain. And also, recognizing that this is not something that you have to share and broadcast right away. Like, you can take baby steps. You can work on this in your own time, at your own pace, and you don't have to declare anything to anybody at any time. And I know you were talking about this earlier, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this as well.
Yeah, I think that your relationship with alcohol is not the right of everyone. It's not anyone's business except for yours. And um to share with others your journey or to not is completely dependent on what is going to get you the results that you're looking for. And so if talking to somebody about it or connecting with them is part of that, then go and do that thing. But if it feels too vulnerable and scary, then you have lots of other options. Like we talked about the surreptitious AF drinks in the midst of and that's another cool thing right now too, where like alcohol-free drinks and options at different places and most bars that I've been to in the last few months have some kind of alcohol-free option where you can still have your fancy drink and no one would know that you're choosing to drink something different than what everybody else was drinking. Except you're going to feel a lot better the next day than most of the other people. I would also say too, a really interesting practice with considering the role of alcohol in society is to just next time you're sitting there and watching Netflix, um, next time you're watching a movie, pay attention to and how often alcohol comes up and how it's depicted and what are the kind of cultural messages that are being sent through the media that you're consuming. Once you start to notice it, it's really kind of like, whoa, it's very um, pervasive almost everywhere. And that can help you. I think it was helped me have that ability to show compassion for myself and how I was kind of like swept in by society with thinking that alcohol was this elixir of life, when in actuality it wasn't doing me really any favors.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And, I'd also say like there's a huge wave of people right now that are interested in health and well-being and leveling up. And the reason that the alcohol-free drinks industry is the largest growing drinks industry at all right now, right? I mean, of course, it comes from a smaller base, so percentage-wise, but it's growing by leaps and bounds. There's more and more small ones. There's the big companies that are involved in it now. There's so many. The reason is because there's more interest. There's more. I mean, there is a whole movement happening. So, the fear that you are going to be on an island by yourself, not drinking while everyone else is drinking, you might just be in the forefront of this whole new wave of people. In fact, I would say you will be because it's happening. There's always going to be drinkers, and that's fine. But there is going to be a more and more people talking openly about it. More and more people experimenting with alcohol-free drinks. I mean, I have a neighbor that she loves her drinks. And I saw her the other day at the beach with an alcohol-free beer. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to hit the hard stuff later, but I'm just starting with this today. I mean, it's everywhere.
Hmm.
So you will not be as alone as you might fear you will be.
Yeah. And that encouragement that you're not going to be alone, also just reminds me to be on the lookout for putting yourself in community with and in society with other people who are asking questions, like reach out to us through the podcast. We'd love to connect with you, and find other alcohol-free communities because the people you surround yourself with will really determine how easy or how hard it is to make changes in your life. I mean, whether that's alcohol or anything else. Like if you hang out with a bunch of rock climbers, chances are you're going to end up climbing a rock, right? Like, and so think about kind of who you're hanging out with too. So
Yeah,
any
so
last
true.
thoughts?
It just as you were saying that, it just made me think like even the people you are hanging out with, if they're big drinkers, like you can make plans that don't involve drinking too. Like I used to think the only thing I could do with my friends was get together for drinks. It's like, oh my gosh, I could call them and see if they want to go for a walk on a Saturday morning or meet at the farmer's market or go for coffee. I mean, there are other things that people that don't drink do that I wasn't really on my radar when I was fully in my
Yeah.
drinking mode.
Even
So
most things,
yeah.
right? Like would you
Hmm.
kind of pull your head out of like the I have to have a drink to feel okay sand? You realize,
Hmm.
wow, most of life is not drinking.
No. Who knew? Who knew?
Who knew? Not me for the longest time, but um
Same.
well, wonderful. So, I hope this episode resonated with you talking about alcohol and society. I hope that you found something useful in here. And if you did, or if anything that we talked about made you think of someone, feel free to share this episode with you. We love that. Like, follow, subscribe to the podcast if you want to hear more conversations about alcohol and questioning your relationship with alcohol and just kind of how to do it without so much pain and anxiety, then stay tuned for more of our episodes here on Tales from the Threshold. But until next time, thank you for being here and have a beautiful day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.